Let me tell you a story you won't forget anytime soon. The kind that clings to your memory like a scar or a legend. You ever witness something so wildly unexpected, so absolutely jaw-dropping, that you just freeze? Eyes wide, heart thudding, your brain struggling to catch up? Yeah, this is one of those moments. It happened in a gritty little martial arts gym tucked away behind a strip mall. The kind of place where discipline is measured in bruises and sweat, not Instagram followers. The mats were worn thin. The punching bags are more duct tape than leather, and the air reeked of adrenaline, old socks, and ambition. Testosterone and tension floated in the air like static. It was a no-nonsense zone, where people came to prove something to others and to themselves. At the center of this charged atmosphere stood a young black belt, lean, smug, bursting with bravado. He strutted around like a rooster in a henhouse, cracking jokes, throwing flashy kicks, and flexing for the small crowd of fellow trainees. He lived for the attention, and today he had his eyes set on his next target. That's when she walked in. An elderly woman, maybe late 70s, silver hair neatly pinned up, wearing a soft floral cardigan and orthopedic shoes that whispered of weekend bingo, not roundhouse kicks. She looked entirely out of place, like someone's sweet grandma had accidentally wandered into the wrong building looking for a knitting circle. The gym fell silent. Then came the snickers. The young black belt raised an eyebrow and smirked. With mock chivalry and an exaggerated bow, he asked her, half joking, half patronizing, if she wanted to spar. The crowd chuckled. Phones came out. This was going to be funny. But what happened next? It wasn't funny at all. It was unforgettable. So here's the scene. It's a Tuesday evening at Genesis Martial Arts in South Austin, a modest, sweat-stained dojo tucked behind a strip of fast food joints and vape shops. Nothing flashy. No neon lights or fancy branding. Just solid mats, a few patched-up punching bags, and the relentless rhythm of bodies hitting the ground. The place hums with effort and ego. Inside, you got a cross-section of America. College kids fueled by protein shakes and Red Bull, middle-aged dads try to reclaim a slice of their glory days, a couple of MMA dreamers with bruised knuckles and quiet eyes, and of course, the usual crew of black belts, the ones who stand just a little straighter, talk a little louder, and act like they've got something to prove. That night, the mood was light, open mat, casual sparring. Nothing too hardcore. A time to test skills, break a sweat, maybe land a flashy move or two for social media clout. People were stretching, shadow boxing, swapping tips, until she walked in. Picture this. An elderly woman, late 60s, maybe early 70s, strolling through the doors like she belonged there. She was petite, unassuming, short, snow-white hair neatly brushed, glasses hanging from a delicate chain around her neck, a pale blue sweater, loose slacks, and a pair of orthopedic shoes, the kind with Velcro straps and thick soles. She looked like she'd just come from knitting club, or maybe a library volunteer shift. Not a single drop of sweat on her, not even a water bottle. Her name? Miriam. Nobody recognized her. She wasn't wearing a GI. No gloves, no wraps, no mouth guard, just that soft, pleasant smile and a well-worn canvas tote bag that proudly read, "Ask me about my grandkids." It was a kind of bag you'd expect to see in a church parking lot, not a sparring session. At first, everyone just assumed she was lost. Maybe she'd wandered into the wrong building. Or maybe she was there to pick up a grandkid, someone's little white belt granddaughter finishing up a kid's class. But Miriam didn't pause. She walked calmly and deliberately to the front desk, pulled out a crumpled waiver from her tote, and handed it over like she'd done this 100 times. Then, in the kind of soft, unhurried voice reserved for asking about the price of peaches at the farmer's market, she said she'd like to join the sparring session. If that was all right. The room froze. For a full beat, nobody spoke. You could practically hear the blinking. Then came the looks. Confused glances bouncing across the mats like ping-pong balls. A whispered, "Is this a joke?" Someone chuckled. Someone else started filming. The black belts, especially him, were already grinning because they thought this was going to be funny. They had no idea what they were about to witness. Now enter Marcus, He's 26, lean, chiseled, and drenched in the kind of swagger that only comes from a few years of being the best in a very small pond. His movements were sharp, his jawline sharper, and he had the kind of smug confidence that made mirrors feel like fan clubs. Marcus had earned his black belt 3 years prior, but you'd think he invented the belt system the way he carried himself. He strutted around the gym like his shadow was doing push-ups. Every nod from the coach, every glance from a newcomer, fed his ego like oxygen to a flame. He clocked Miriam the second she stepped onto the mat, and when he did, the smirk spread across his face like oil on water. He didn't even try to hide it. That laugh, sharp, mocking, and just loud enough to carry across the gym, cut through the air like a slap. "Hey, you want to spar with me, Granny?" he called out, voice thick with sarcasm and bravado. "I promise I won't hit too hard." The room cracked, half with awkward giggles, half with actual laughter. Some people laughed because they thought it was a joke, some because they didn't know what else to do. A few glanced at the coach, unsure they should step in or let the scene play out. And Miriam? She didn't blink, didn't flinch. She just turned toward Marcus, calm, composed, almost grandmotherly, and gave him the kind of smile you'd expect from someone offering you a warm plate of cookies. Then, with a voice as sweet as a lullaby and twice as disarming, she said, "Sure, dear, I'll try to go easy on you." And just like that, the entire gym froze. Laughter stopped mid-breath. A few jaws actually dropped. Even Marcus, for a split second, blinked like he'd misheard her. But no, she was dead serious, polite, gentle, and completely unshaken. The air shifted. Something unspoken passed through the room. The laughter died, replaced by something else. Curiosity, a flicker of doubt, and maybe, just maybe, the tiniest shred of fear. Now you've got to really picture this to believe it. They gear up. Marcus is bouncing on his toes, cocky as ever, wearing that grin people flash right before they get humbled. He's practically vibrated with anticipation, probably thinking he's about to create a viral moment. Meanwhile, Miriam steps onto the mat like she's entering a quiet chapel. No nerves, no rush. Just calm, deliberate grace. Her posture's upright, hands relaxed at her sides, like she's more concerned with posture than punches. The bell rings. Marcus immediately shifts into performance mode. He does this exaggerated shuffle, a cocky Ollie-style dance, floating left, then right, trying to show off a crowd. It's all for laughs. His face oozes arrogance. Then he throws a playful jab, nothing heavy, just a probing strike, like he's measuring distance, waiting to see how long until she folds. And then it happens. Bam! In a flash so quick it almost defied physics, Miriam steps off the center line, fluid as water, grabs Marcus's wrist mid-extension, pivots her entire frame with quiet, practiced elegance, and sweeps his leg clean out from under him. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. But it was devastating. Marcus slammed to the mat like a sack of wet laundry. The entire gym inhaled at once. Every jaw dropped. Phones lowered. Conversation stopped mid-word. Marcus scrambled back to his feet, flushed and flustered. He forced a laugh, brushing himself off like it was all part of the show. "Lucky shot," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. But the grin had faded. His eyes darted around. He wasn't joking anymore. They reset. This time, Marcus came in more serious. He dropped the act. His stance tightened, his jaw clenched. He snapped a low kick toward her shin, fast, focused, the kind that could bruise bone. But Miriam? She didn't even blink. With the quiet control of someone who's done this 1,000 times, she leaned back just enough to dodge, caught his leg in midair with one hand, and in a move so fluid it looked rehearsed, twisted and dropped her weight, flipping him again. Only this time harder. He hit the mat with a loud thud, the kind of thud that echoes, the kind that tells you, this isn't fun anymore. And you ever seen a black belt look confused? It's surreal, like watching a lion get slapped across the face by a house cat. Marcus wasn't just surprised. He was shaken. So now Marcus, stripped of the smug grin, and officially out of wisecracks, gets serious. No more showboating. No more cocky footwork. This time he charges in with real heat, tight combinations, crisp jabs, aggressive footwork. the kind of power he usually reserves for tournament fights. You could see the frustration creeping in, riding the edge of every strike. He wasn't playing anymore. This was about pride. But Miriam, she wasn't just defending. She was dismantling him. Every punch he threw, she deflected with surgical ease. Every step forward he took, she redirected, rerouted, or spun against him. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. It was like watching someone read from a script they'd written themselves, not reacting, but anticipating. She moved with the calm efficiency of a master who's seen every variation of this dance, and she didn't waste a single motion. No huffing, no puffing, just cold, quiet, clinical technique. And here's the part that nobody in the gym was ready for. She wasn't just good. She was better than anyone in that room. Turns out, Miriam was no ordinary grandmother. She was a 6th-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a disciple of the old school. She had trained under some of the most legendary names in the discipline, back when belts were earned with blood, sweat, and years, not Instagram highlights. She'd spent 4 decades teaching self-defense in women's shelters across the state. She had helped trauma survivors reclaim their power. She had once disarmed a knife-wielding attacker during a subway mugging in New York. But all that, she hadn't stepped onto a public mat in over 10 years. Still, muscle memory is a beautiful thing. So is humility. But Marcus, he had none of that left. By the end of the session, Miriam had tapped him out 3 times. Not with force, not with flair. Just clean, undeniable technique. A triangle choke here, an armbar there, a textbook sweep into a rear naked choke to seal it all. Each time she let go, she didn't gloat, didn't smirk. She just offered a polite nod and a soft, "Thank you." And when she finally stepped off the mat, calm as ever, grabbing her canvas tote like she was heading to the grocery store, the gym was absolutely, completely silent. Not even a whisper. Just awe. You ever hear that old saying, "Don't judge a book by its cover"? After that night, the entire gym agreed it should have Miriam's face printed right next to it. Marcus learned something most people don't realize until they're humbled. Respect isn't earned through belts, biceps, or loud bravado. It's not about how hard you hit or how fast you move. Respect comes from how you carry yourself, how you show up, and how you treat the people you think are beneath you. That night, Miriam didn't just outmatch him physically. She outclassed him in every possible way. She didn't humiliate him, didn't rub it in. There were no taunts, no victory laps, no smug glances over her shoulder. She didn't need to. Her silence said everything. She walked onto that mat with quiet confidence and walked off, leaving behind a room full of people who would never look at strength the same way again. And here's the kicker. A week later, Marcus came back, not with swagger, not with jokes, but with humility. He stood in front of the class and publicly apologized. You could hear the sincerity in his voice. No excuses, no bravado. Just a man who had been taken apart and put back together by someone who didn't fit his idea of a real fighter. Then he did something even more surprising. He asked Miriam if she would train him. And do you want to know what she said? She smiled, gentle but firm, and replied, "Only if you promise to stop underestimating people who don't look like fighters." Boom. Mic drop. So, what can we take from this? Simple, never underestimate someone based on how they look. Whether it's an elderly woman in orthopedic shoes, a quiet kid in the back of the room, or the janitor sweeping the floor after hours, you never really know what someone's capable of. People carry whole worlds inside them. Skills, stories, strengths you can't see at first glance. Humility? It beats ego every single time. Marcus wasn't a bad fighter. Far from it. He had talent. But his arrogance made him blind. It clouded his judgment and turned confidence into carelessness. Miriam? She didn't have to boast. She let her actions, her precision, her patience, her poise, speak for her. And when they did, they spoke volumes. Respect costs you nothing, but it can change everything. Imagine how different that night might have been if Marcus had approached her with curiosity instead of mockery, with openness instead of assumptions. It's a reminder that real strength is nothing to prove, and real warriors often arrive in unexpected forms. And maybe the best part of all, it's never too late to surprise people or surprise yourself. Miriam might have looked like a sweet, cookie-baking grandma, and she probably brings lemon bars to church potlucks and remembers everyone's birthday. But she's also the kind of woman who, if you test her, can snap your arm like a breadstick and still remind you to drink water afterward. Because that's the thing about power, the real kind. It's quiet, it's kind, and it never needs to shout. So the next time you feel that familiar urge, that little smirk when someone doesn't look the part, think of Miriam. Think of the woman in orthopedic shoes, the one who strolled into a martial arts gym like she was headed to a Sunday service, and calmly reminded an entire room what real strength actually looks like. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't throw insults. She just moved with precision, grace, and quiet command, and in doing so, flipped every assumption on its head. And if you ever catch yourself getting too confident, too cocky, thinking you've got it all figured out, ask yourself one simple question. Would I bet my pride against a grandma in a cardigan? Because me, I wouldn't. Not anymore. Don't make assumptions based on appearances. Not at work, not in relationships, not in the little everyday interactions that seem routine. You never truly know who you're standing next to. Someone's outward image might hide decades of wisdom, discipline, or experience. And if you judge too quickly, you might just miss the lesson they were meant to teach you. Stay humble. Always. Because no matter how skilled, smart, or strong you think you are, there's always someone out there who's been at it longer. Someone who doesn't feel the need to flaunt it. Because they got nothing left to prove. Stay open. Learn from everyone. Especially those who've been walking the path long, before you even found the trail. They carry lessons you can't Google. Stories you can't find in a manual. And insights that only come with time. And most importantly, train like Miriam. Live like Miriam. Be like Miriam. Quiet strength. Graceful power. Fierce humility. Thanks for sticking around to hear this story. If it made you think, even for a moment, share it with someone who could use a reminder. Because real power, it doesn't shout. It doesn't posture. It whispers. And then it flips you on your back.